This is CBC Vancouver News.
In the wake of what is happening in the Middle East and the hatred that we see around in our communities.
Fostering dialogue and combating hate. Dozens of mosques opened their doors to the public this weekend with the aim of breaking down barriers and building bridges. And
that is the strength of shaking, where you can start to see some damage.
An earthquake northwest of Campbell River sends tremors across BC's south coast. Plus,
by being able to listen to their stories and help build connections, we've got more back from it.
How a Christmas card campaign is helping the most vulnerable connect with loved ones. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Janella Hamilton. Tanya is away tonight. We begin in Ottawa, where RCMP are warning parents and community leaders to be on the lookout for signs of radicalization after a teen was charged with terrorism-related offences for an alleged plot against the city's Jewish community. JP Tasker looks at what we know about the case.
The RCMP say they've stopped what could have been a catastrophic attack on the Jewish community. Little is known about the terror suspect. The person is a minor and therefore shielded by a publication ban. It's alleged they instructed someone to carry out an attack with an explosive device.
The tension, the fear among Jewish residents is very high.
The city's mayor is promising more protective measures.
We've been increasing patrols around synagogues and other Jewish institutions.
Community leaders fear the threat is rising.
Anti-Semitism has skyrocketed since October 7th, and I've been saying it over and over again. If things aren't going to get better, they're going to get worse, and here they got worse.
The Mounties report an uptick in youth radicalization, saying in a statement there's a concerning trend of violent extremism and terrorist use of the internet. Since June 2023, the RCMP has arrested 5 young persons on terrorism-related offences.
If the whole Israeli-Hamas conflict hadn't happened, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
This terrorism expert says the war and how it's portrayed on social media is driving some teenagers into the arms of recruiters.
You meet other people who share your point of view, who confirm it, who urge you on to do even more, get involved more in the ideas, to solidify your views. Legitimate it. Wow, look, I'm not alone. All these other people feel this way too.
Ottawa's Muslim community is on edge, says this local imam.
Whenever there is a threat against anyone, including our Jewish neighbors, that is deeply concerning to all of us.
Sikander Hashmi says the brutal scenes out of the Israel-Gaza conflict have stirred up anger and frustration.
Clearly, these types of horrific tragedies and horrific instances of war and pain and grief can certainly be used to try to radicalize young people. It's flooding their social media streams. We're not in a good place right now.
There's been a spike in hate crimes across the country. Hundreds of incidents have been reported to police since October 7th, including dozens here in Ottawa. The federal government has chipped in $5 million to bolster security at religious and cultural sites, but community leaders say they need a lot more than that to keep people safe. JP Tasker, CBC News, Ottawa.
In an effort to tackle the staggering spike in hate crimes and the rise in Islamophobia and anti-Semitism here in BC and across the country, dozens of mosques opened their doors this weekend, giving non-Muslim Canadians a chance to ask questions and voice concerns about the conflict in the Middle East. As Sohrab Sandhu reports, the initiative is breaking down barriers and building bridges.
Umran Bhatti is the Imam at Baitur Rahman Mosque in Delta. Today, he's hosting a unique congregation made up of members from his mosque and people from outside his faith. This weekend's gathering, part of a national initiative being held at Ahmadiyya mosques across the country. Organizers say Bring a Friend to the Mosque is aimed at promoting understanding and cultural compassion by providing a platform for open and honest dialogue.
This initiative background is basically to help understand with the rise of the anti-Semitism and Islamophobia around the world. The Youth Association took up this opportunity to invite their neighbors, to invite their friends and colleagues. This is how we can have these open forum dialogues.
Kevin Mainagadinji was invited by his friend to be a part of the conversation.
I'm always curious, I like knowing things, getting to, meet with people, and that's why I'm here.
Mainagadinji says the experience gives him a chance to understand how the Muslim community is feeling and who they are.
We get to learn that what we see probably on social media, what is portrayed of them, is not really true.
PC Human Rights Commissioner says the violence overseas has sparked a surge of discrimination towards Jewish and Muslim people in this province. The National Council of Canadian Muslims says the past few months have been the worst in decades for Islamophobia.
Especially in the wake of what is happening in the Middle East and the hatred that we see around in our communities, whether it is in the form of Islamophobia or in the form of anti-Semitism, I think any such initiative that brings people together and gives them the opportunity to have a dialogue is always appreciated.
Imam Bhatti says it is important to recognize every hate crime and condemn it unequivocally.
When we and our brothers and Jewish members get attacked or they have some incidences, then Muslim brothers will be there to help a supporting hand and leading shoulder in these times of difficulties. And we believe that this is the way we can promote love for all, hatred for none, and bring people together.
Organizers plan to hold similar events in the coming weeks, with hopes of educating communities and eradicating misconceptions. Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, Delta.
A minor earthquake sent tremors across BC's south coast this afternoon. Earthquakes Canada says it happened around 3 o'clock, about 100 kilometers northeast of Campbell River in BC's Coast Mountains region.
I haven't heard of any reports of damage or any reports of landslides or any sort of secondary effects from this earthquake. But certainly when you're up at the magnitude 4.9 range, structures that are nearby within 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers, that is the strength of shaking where you can start to see some damage.
The agency says the quake is registered at a preliminary magnitude of 4.9. Cassidy says earthquakes in that region are quite rare. People from as far as Bella Coola to Pitt Meadows have reported feeling the tremors, something Cassidy says is expected for an earthquake of that magnitude. RCMP say they are concerned for the well-being of a missing Indigenous woman. 28-year-old Ashley Zeller was last seen in Burnaby on Wednesday around 4:30 in the afternoon. She is described as 5'7" with a slim build and was wearing a black hoodie, puffy jacket, and blue jeans. Anyone with information regarding her whereabouts is asked to call Burnaby RCMP. And to the island now, where transit services in Campbell River and the Comox Valley have been suspended after more than 70 transit workers walked off the job Friday. From bus and handy dart operators to mechanics and support staff, striking employees are demanding wage parity with other transit workers in BC. Claire Palmer has more from the picket line.
Bus and handy dart operators, mechanics, cleaners, and support staff, these transit workers say they feel underappreciated and overworked.
Tired, frustrated, wishing that they were able to make a deal with us. So we're not asking for a lot, we're just asking to, make wages.
Unifor Local 114's bargaining committee had come to 2 negotiated agreements with their employer, Pacific Western Transit, but members overwhelmingly rejected both, prompting workers to walk off the job on Friday, citing unfair wages and excessive overtime.
Having to do shifts and a half or whatever we can to try and keep the service running in the valley for the people.
Unifor says employees feel like they are blamed by passengers for service disruptions when staff shortages lead to delayed or canceled buses. They say better wages would help with recruitment and retention and ultimately mean less overtime for existing employees.
The membership have been in a position where they've had to do massive amount of overtime for a period of about a year, and they're getting burned out. Then when they also look to see what their counterparts are getting paid elsewhere in British Columbia, they're dollars an hour behind them. So there's also a bit of frustration that comes with that as well.
The union is seeking wages comparable to communities like Victoria, Whistler, and the Fraser Valley. In a statement issued last week, PW Transit said, "The company believes we have taken every measure to come to an agreement at the bargaining table and avoid a strike situation." PW Transit is a private company contracted by BC Transit to run bus services in the regions. Davies says it's time for BC Transit to step up.
BC Transit has to address this. The gap in wages is something that's grown more and more over the years, decades even, and they have to start funding these contracts properly.
PW Transit employees in BC's Sea to Sky region were on strike last year for nearly 150 days, in what is being called the longest strike in BC history. Handy Dart users will still be able to get to medical appointments, but all other bookings will be cancelled. There is no word yet on when bus service could return to the area, forcing transit users to find alternate ways to get around. Claire Palmer, CBC News, Comox.
The federal government will unveil new regulations Tuesday aimed at boosting electric vehicle sales. It wants all new passenger vehicles to be zero emission by 2035. But as Yvette Bren shows us, hurdles remain.
The Canadian government is hitting the gas on phasing out gas-powered vehicles, leaving some drivers concerned.
What happens if your car dies while you're waiting for a spot to charge? There was a lot of questions I had that I just don't think are quite being answered at this point.
Among them, how can you get your hands on one? Some wait lists are long. Now CBC has learned the federal government will implement sales targets to speed up availability. Automakers will earn credits based on EV sales, extra if they push emission-free cars faster. By 2026, the government wants 20% of all new cars sold to be zero emission. That ramps up to 60% by 2030 and 100% by 2035.
This policy is very significant because it means that Canada will actually stay on the path towards net zero carbon emissions.
Some say it's about time.
When someone buys another gas car, they've probably been lost for 7 to 10 years. That's about how long people keep their cars. So it does really make a difference to start now.
Still, car makers are pumping the brakes. With Canada short tens of thousands of charging stations, they say Canadians need cash incentives.
We're calling on the government today to help Canadians make the switch to electric with the supports required.
Not just infrastructure, but more choice.
Requiring automakers to meet these sales targets will make them break EVs out of the luxury market and go more mainstream with more affordable mass market models, which is what we need in the fight against climate change.
If they come out with a cheaper version, a smaller one, a two-door convertible or something, I'm going to be first in line.
For now, many drivers are waiting or on a wait list for the perfect emission-free ride. Yvette Bren, CBC News, Vancouver.
Operation Rednose, an organization that offers a free way to get home from your Christmas party, says due to a low number of volunteers post-pandemic, services are only being offered in select municipalities in Metro Vancouver.
It caused a lot of people now to use different ride services where that wasn't in place when we first started doing this.
Services are offered in north of the Fraser River from Burnaby to Maple Ridge plus Chilliwack. The organization was started to prevent drunk driving, which the RCMP say is the leading cause of crashes in BC, causing 61 deaths each year. A student-run Christmas card campaign is helping people living on the downtown east side reconnect with their loved ones. As Karis Hogg reports, volunteers have sent out hundreds of cards on behalf of vulnerable residents.
Okay, who did the penguin card? Tell them I give them my $500.
Tavis Dodds is among hundreds who have been helped by Project Hello, which stands for Helping Everyone Locate Loved Ones. He's estranged from most of his family, but he wants to send a card to his dad this year. Last year, the group helped him send a bunch of cards.
Basically did all my correspondence for me, and then I've totally forgot about it, and then I saw them again this year. But then I don't have any addresses this year, so hopefully they can figure it out.
Educator Christy Blakeway formed Project Hello 15 years ago with a few of her students. She says they often use Facebook and Google to try and find some addresses.
Do our best. So this was to Grandma. Okay. And do you remember Grandma's name? First name and last name? Do you want to write that down for me?
Elementary school kids make the cards, and then every Christmas, Blake Way, along with parents and students from across Metro Vancouver, head to the downtown east side. Not only do they mail the cards, they also help write them.
We always phone a family before we mail the card because we don't want to mail these messages of love and have them go to wrong addresses.
Blake Way says the project has helped make some heartwarming connections.
I had one lady I remember who dropped the phone. She hadn't heard from her son in about 15 years, and the rest of her family believed he had died, and as a mom, she always believed he was still alive.
Blakeway says what started as a way to help people connect with loved ones has turned into something more.
By being able to listen to their stories and help build connections, we've got more back from it. We're the ones that are learning about the community and learning about the stories of people living on the streets and shifting perception of homelessness.
This year, the card campaign is reaching a milestone. They'll be mailing their 1,000th card, making 1,000 connections for people facing barriers who still want to send messages of love. Karis Hogg, CBC News, Vancouver.
Trusted this government, and now it's even worse.
Protests swell in Israel after the death of 3 hostages. We'll have that story after the break. In international news, reports say Israeli and Hamas negotiators have both signaled openness to a renewed ceasefire, but cannot yet agree on terms. It's believed Egypt and Qatar are pursuing a truce. Today, though, saw more bombardment, more demands for a hostage deal, and one hostage laid to rest. Katie Simpson reports.
Eylon Shamraz's casket is placed in front of his family, so devastated they can barely look up. As the 26-year-old is mourned and remembered through music and prayer, it does little to soothe their grief. Shamraz is one of 3 hostages mistakenly killed by Israeli forces in Gaza. Authorities now saying the men called out for help in Hebrew as IDF forces approached. 3 people came out, this Israeli Major General says. They took off their shirts so that no one would think they have an explosive device and held a white cloth on a pole to identify themselves. Signs reading SOS and help 3 hostages were found near where they were killed. These deaths have added to the intensity of protests in Tel Aviv.
I've never trusted this government, and now it's even worse.
Thousands in this crowd are united in their calls for hostage negotiations to resume immediately.
They must get them out with talking to the Hamas and with making some deal with them, not by bombing everything.
Israel's intense air and ground campaign continued through the weekend. Children are among the injured in Khan Yunis after a shell struck the maternity ward of a hospital. These scenes of desperation sparking a fresh push by the U.S. and other allies to urge Israel to do more to protect civilians. The U.S. Secretary of Defense is in the Middle East and will reportedly urge Israel to wind down some aspects of its military operation in the weeks ahead. It follows this op-ed, why the UK and Germany back a sustainable ceasefire. Too many civilians have been killed, say the foreign ministers of both countries. They do not support an immediate halt in the fighting, arguing it would only help Hamas. But they go on to support peace lasting for days, years, generations. We therefore support a ceasefire, but only if it is sustainable. Israel's prime minister is showing no signs of changing course. The will of the fallen is what guides us, he says. We will fight to the end. The visit by the U.S. Secretary of Defense to Israel is part of a broader effort by the White House to deliver a direct message to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to do more to protect civilians. The Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza says nearly 20,000 people have been killed. The Biden administration has been changing its tone and is more critical of Israel's operations. However, it continues to support its ally. About a week ago, the State Department rushed the sale of $100 million in munitions to Israel, skipping the routine congressional oversight process. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
Here we have a live shot of Harbor Center, all in the Christmas spirits. I will have your full forecast coming up next.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
For 37 years, British Columbians have been donating to food banks at CBC British Columbia's Food Bank Day, raising more than $18 million for food banks in BC. December 1st kicked off the annual charity drive and continues to the end of the month. We thank you for generously donating and supporting local communities in our province. Make the season kind and donate until December 31st at cbc.ca/foodbankday.
All right, it is time now to take a look at our forecast. Let's start with current temperatures around the province. Beginning in Vancouver here, 8 degrees is our current temps. Over in Kamloops, 2 degrees, a bit chillier in Cranbrook at -4 degrees, and up in Prince George sitting at 0 right now, and in Prince Rupert, 4 degrees. Moving into tomorrow's forecast, lots of rain across the board. Tofino, rain, same with Comox, 8 degrees, 10 degrees, about the same across that area. Into Victoria, 9 degrees with, again, lots of precipitation. In Abbotsford, however, we're going to see it warm up to 9 degrees with sun and clouds, and 8 degrees in Hope for tomorrow. And here in Metro Vancouver, again, lots of wet weather all week long, starting with tomorrow, a high of 9, Tuesday, a high of 10, a little warmer on Wednesday with 11, and then we drop back down to a high of 9 on Thursday. Well, step aside, Santa. This year, kids are lining up for a picture with Frankie, the holiday llama.
It was really fun. He kind of smelled like barn, though.
The event is put on by Prince George Animal Rescue. Photos are by donation, with proceeds going to help cover the costs of caring for the animals. The organization says inflation has been stressing the rescue's already tight budget. There are currently 3 llamas up for adoption on their website, but not Frankie. He's staying home for the holidays. And now, before we leave you, we're going to bring you an update on our CBC Food Bank total. Thanks to your generous donations, we have raised nearly $2 million, and there's still plenty of time to donate on our website. That wraps up at the end of the month. That is your late news for this Sunday. Thank you so much.